Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our third episode of Live Q&A. This time, our topic will be the 3 truths about US visa interviews, myths versus reality. Hey, guys, I'm your host, Janet, and with me today is our expert, Yvette Bansal. Yvette, it's great to have you here to discuss this important topic.
Thanks, Janet.
Fantastic. Let us jump right into our first question. So my first question is based on the common myths and misconceptions. So Yvette, what are the common misconceptions about US visa interviews?
So it depends on the visa category. If we're talking about F1s, those students always worry about gap years. I'm not going to cover that here, but we have a different video that covers gap years, and I'll do another video regarding F1 interviews. In general, for B1, B2 visas and other non-immigrant visas, most people have 3 myths that they worry about. They worry about the officer's mood and have questions about the officer's mood. They are not sure if the visa interviews are just formalities and the officer has maybe had that decision made ahead of time. And they fear that rejections are permanent. So these are just 3 of many myths that are out there. So as a former consular officer, I adjudicated 40,000 plus visas during my span of 5 years with the State Department. So I'm here to debunk some of these myths.
Thank you for clarifying that, Yvette. It's important to address these misconceptions and provide accurate information. Now let's move on to our next question. So the myth states that interviews are hostile and unfriendly. Yvette, could you elaborate more on this myth, which suggests that interviewers are hostile and unfriendly? How can applicants dispel this false information?
So the myth about the officer's mood, and worse, that the officers are hostile and unfriendly towards applicants, that can sometimes be true. They can be a little hostile, or they can seem a little unfriendly. So as I said in past videos, the officers have to adjudicate sometimes 120 visas within 3.5 hours. So while there's no quota of rejection or denial, which is another myth, there is a quota of how many visas that officer has to adjudicate a day. So they have to go really quickly. So being under that much pressure puts them in a bad mood. Could that affect you? Maybe that could affect you if you're not answering questions directly. So the way I see this myth is it can be true that the officer's mood could potentially have an impact on your visa adjudication. It's not that this myth is completely untrue. However, if you're a qualified applicant, it shouldn't really matter. If you're an applicant that maybe is not presenting your story well, and the officer is in a bad mood and you're not answering questions directly, then maybe the officer's mood could potentially impact your visa adjudication. So you can put the officer in a good mood. Even if the officer is in a bad mood, you can put them in a good mood by answering questions directly, being prepared for your visa interview. So since they have limited amount of time, if you're not prepared and you don't answer questions directly, you're just going to exacerbate the situation for the officer who wants to get through the interview as fast as possible. So practicing, knowing your finances really well, knowing your purpose of travel well, having all of the information that is required for you, having your passport out, giving them your passport right away. Mainly documents are not presented, but just being prepared and answering things in a crisp, short, direct, and whole way will put the officer in a better mood. So is it a myth? Are they hostile? Are they unfriendly? They can be sometimes, but you can put them in a better mood, and that's definitely going to put you in a better position to get your visa.
Wow, excellent advice, Yvette. So moving on to the third question, the importance of visa interviews. This myth states that visa interviews are mere formalities. So Yvette, can you emphasize more on the significance of these interviews in determining an applicant's eligibility?
They are not mere formalities. The officer doesn't really know much about you beyond your DS-160 and the verbal review that you're having. The interview is literally the most important part of you getting your visa. So it's not simply a formality. They're going to take everything you're going to say. They're going to try to assess if you're telling the truth, if your intentions are as you say they are, and they're going to see your DS-160 if it's pristine, if it's done well. And we actually have a blog on udebivisa.com completely free. You can check out our blog on how to make your DS-160 really, really good so that the officer can read it well, there's no misspellings, etc. So visa interviews are not mere formalities. They need to be structured well, they need to be prepared for, and you need to go in there with your A game, because it is going to be the sole basis along with that DS-160 for an approval or denial.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So my last question for the day, like last but not the least. So the question is that rejection is permanent, like that's a myth. So can you elaborate more about this?